gorillas are among the most endangered species in the world. The reason is the destruction of their natural habitats in Africa through deforestation or human settlement. In addition, they often fall victim to poaching and illegal trade, which further decimates their population. Because of this, there are numerous efforts to protect these fascinating animals. Watch the video till the end, you will be surprised. One such project is led by Wilco, a man from the Netherlands. He is aware that without intervention, gorillas would have no chance of surviving. The joy was all the greater when the gorilla lady Angela was pregnant. But at that point nobody could have guessed what would happen in the next few hours. Wilco learned that Angela was withdrawing even more than usual. She even refused to eat. He knew this could be a sign of imminent labor. Eventually she became restless, moaned, and lay down. Just as Wilco expected, labor began. A dedicated team of keepers jumped into action immediately and were ready to intervene at any time. Although the conservation center was under-resourced due to a lack of funds, the staff did not lack dedication to their work. They often worked overtime, worked night shifts, and volunteered to keep operations running. Due to the lack of mobile facilities, they had to erect a tent in a corner of Angela's enclosure. Some of the keepers even brought blankets from home and laid them out on the floor to make Angela more comfortable. Without prompting, Angela wandered into the cozy corner, settled in there, and prepared her body for the upcoming labor pains. Despite all their careful planning, they had overlooked one important detail that would soon cause chaos. Angela had already started preparing for the birth. With powerful thrusts, the tiny offspring finally came to light. Although Angela was an experienced mother, this birth was different from the previous ones. She had to mobilize all her strength and endurance. After an unusually long birth and thanks to the support of the helpers, the moment had finally come. The result of Angela's efforts was a radiant baby gorilla with bright eyes and a wide-open mouth, taking his first breath of fresh air in the world. Angela took her newborn in her arms, cradling him lovingly and using her dark hairy arms as a pillow in one heartwarming moment. His tiny hand clung to her finger as she lovingly examined him from head to toe, looking for any signs of weakness. After she was satisfied, it was the expert's turn. Angela patiently allowed the vets to examine the little baby. She knew the team was here to help because it wasn't her first birth. Fortunately, the newborn was breathing normally and responding well to the tests. Wilco commended everyone for their good work. Suddenly Angela felt pain, her body grew restless, and her attention shifted from the baby. Something serious was happening inside her. Wilco, watching from a distant viewing platform, suspected it might be some kind of internal bleeding. The fact that Angela hadn't had an X-ray or ultrasound done was now proving to be a risky and potentially fatal mistake. Angela rolled on the floor while the vets tried to administer her medication. But every time they approached, the gorilla would fight back, swatting her hands away and lying on the ground. Angela was determined to refuse any help. Sedation could endanger their health, and surgery would be just as risky. At that critical moment, Wilco realized what could be happening here. Over the radio he instructed the team to prepare for a possible further birth. At first they looked at him in surprise. Some of them had worked at the zoo for more than 20 years and had never had a twin seen in a gorilla. They didn't need much convincing though, because as they examined Angela more closely, they soon saw for themselves what was going on. A speck of light gray and pink peeked out and approached the outside world. Wilco was right. Twin births were extremely rare among gorillas, and it was even less likely that both babies would emerge unharmed from the birth. The immediate threat was Angela's health. She began to bleed profusely and was exhausted. Angela seemed to be in even more pain than before. Groaning, she clutched the lower part of her abdomen, struggling against the great pain that coursed through her body, and another long period of labor ensued. Over half an hour this time. Eventually Angela was stretched out on the floor, gasping for breath from exhaustion. A second, almost identical baby had been born, this time a girl. She was just as tiny and adorable as her slightly older brother, but her cute appearance masked a number of issues. The second baby was not as healthy as the first. It was coughing, having trouble breathing, and showing signs of chronic dehydration. Any of these problems could pose a serious threat. It would really be a miracle if she survived. Angela had no strength left to hold the baby. The team removed the baby from the enclosure and took it to an operating room. A few moments later, as Angela sat up and tried to catch her breath to recover, she looked with fear in the direction that her baby had disappeared through the gate along with the people. Exhausted and out of breath, she finally fell asleep under the watchful eye of a vet who stayed behind. Her daughter was taken to the operating room, away from her mother. No one knew yet that this was a completely wrong decision that would have catastrophic consequences. First, the baby was hooked up to multiple hoses to ensure a constant supply of water and nutrients. From then on, however, the treatment plan became less clear. It couldn't go on like this much longer. The team was almost completely silent. Neither of them were optimistic that this baby would survive. If a baby was unconscious or not breathing properly, they usually had to put them to sleep. Wilco frantically attempted to obtain an experimental drug he had heard about via several calls to a nearby research facility. It may be the baby's only chance of survival. If the project had had more funding, it would have been in stock too. The drug was specially developed for this species of western lowland gorilla. Unfortunately, none of the nearby zoos had the drug in stock. The nearest was over 1,500 kilometers away in Spain. That was good news and bad news. It meant the drug could be shipped immediately, but even with expedited shipping, it wouldn't arrive for a couple of days at the earliest. The team cared for the little gorilla around the clock, but that probably wouldn't be enough to keep him going that long. Wilco considered the whole situation. Angela probably wouldn't be able to give birth to a child at that age. And if this twin female didn't make it, that was one less potential mother for the future. Repopulation efforts depended on having enough females to carry babies. Meanwhile, Angela woke up from her sleep and struggled to get an overview of where she was. But once she regained her composure, she became acutely aware of her missing child. She also felt the time pressure because she didn't know how long it had been since the doctors had taken the baby away from her. As the hours dragged on, she realized something was wrong. The people were nowhere to be seen. She picked up the male twin in one arm and ran to the edge of her enclosure, while banging her free hand on a fence to get someone's attention. The vet assigned to guard the enclosure disappeared through a hidden door, fearing a protective mother might turn violent at any moment. The silence only made her angrier. The team observed the gorilla through the surveillance camera. To the staff, her behavior was a good sign because it meant she was alive and well. Meanwhile, the baby gorilla's heartbeat slowed and its breathing quickened. Almost all employees had already lost hope. But Wilco had an unusual idea. But when he first proposed it, he was quickly rejected by his peers. However, as the situation became more and more desperate, it was decided to give it a try. Wilco wanted to give Angela the chance to hold her baby in the hopes that it would trigger some kind of deep maternal bond and work a miracle. Still clad in a white surgical gown, he carried the nearly lifeless baby out to Angela's enclosure, who immediately cocked her head in interest. Overcome with her emotions, Angela ran towards Wilco. There was a brief moment when the team was unsure if she was going to be aggressive or not. But those fears vanished as she gently took her second twin from Wilco's arms. The two exchanged a long, understanding look. However, when the gorilla lady turned around, she let out a powerful groan. But she had no intention of giving up. She gently rocked the newborn and rocked it from side to side. At that moment, something unexpected happened. Feeling the warm embrace of his mother, the little gorilla slowly stretched his limbs, a movement he had not made since birth. Wilco was only a few meters away and could hardly believe his eyes. He had expected that he would soon have to retrieve the lifeless body from the enclosure. But as the baby nestled against Angela's chest and she hugged both twins tightly, the baby's condition suddenly seemed to improve. Wilco approached the two and gently placed a stethoscope on the baby's chest. He could hear his heartbeat pick up speed again. For a moment, Wilco could hardly believe that his unconventional method actually seemed to be working. From the observation deck above, he grinned broadly at his colleagues and gave them a thumbs up. At least for the moment, the situation looked promising. A few more tests confirmed that the baby's health was indeed improving. The urgently needed medicine finally arrived the next day. Wilco rushed to meet the van in the parking lot early that morning, hastily scribbled his signature, and returned to the zoo. Wilco entered the enclosure again. Because of the close bond he had formed with Angela, she trusted him more than anyone else. After the drug was injected, it only took a few hours for it to start working. The baby's life was saved. And thus an important step for the conservation of the gorillas. Please leave a like and subscribe. If this story fascinates you as much as it does us, you should watch this video. A dog rides the subway every day, then a man follows him and realizes the reason. Click here for the full story.